What it do, everybody? This your man Dre, aka Dre on Wheels. Welcome back, you guys, to the 11:30 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. How everybody doing out there? Appreciate you guys joining me here for a new episode. You dig, man? It's a bonus episode, but I appreciate you guys joining me back here on the podcast, man. For real. Good morning, good night, good afternoon to all my listeners all over the world. Canada, Germany, the UK, all over the states. Shout out to DC. Appreciate you guys joining me back on another episode of the 11:30 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. Before we dive into everything, you guys, don't forget to follow the 11:30 podcast on all social media platforms. Subscribe to the 11:30 podcast YouTube channel, and follow me on Instagram at the 11:30 podcast. But you guys, man, how your day going? It's Saturday. Woke up and found out we got a new president. For real, Joe Biden, congratulations. Not everybody may be, greetings to that, but hey, life is life, we move on. But enough of that, you guys, man. We're gonna talk some wrestling. It's gonna be a very dope episode, you guys, man. Like I said, on this bonus episode, I had to stop past, man, and deliver some new content, and also bring in the second woman that's gonna be joining me here on the 11:30 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling, to chat some wrestling, man. Man, it ain't nothing like having a woman you can chat some wrestling with, man. Got a bunch of guys, but not a lot of women though. But you guys, man, Stephanie Hardy, she's from Birmingham, Alabama, you guys. She's the host and the creator of Hardy Wrestling Podcast, the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. She's going to be joining me here in just a bit. Before we get to that, you guys, I want to thank everybody who support Talk Pro Wrestling, who downloaded, who played it. Over 1,000 plays, you guys, man. Let's keep it going. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, appreciate it so much. And once again, you guys, like I was saying, my guest that's joining me here from Birmingham, Alabama, she's the host of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Stephanie, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm really honored to be here right now. Thank you so much for opening up your doors to me. I'm really glad to be here.
No problem. You were in one of the wrestling groups, the National Alliance Wrestling groups that I saw you in, and I was like, okay, cool, because I share my podcast in that groups, and I was like, I was looking for, women who want to be on the podcast, and also women who have podcasts as well. So I saw yours and I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. And my analytics said, more men listen to the podcast. So I want a woman on to share her point of views and everything like that. So that'd be cool. So your day going good so far?
Yeah, my day is going fantastic. It's a regular relaxed Saturday here in my house. Then we just got the news, everything popped off the way it did. So we've been celebrating. So everything's good. Everything's great.
Okay, cool. Well, for my listeners who are joining me here on this bonus episode, who are not familiar with you, do you mind introducing yourself and also telling my listeners a little something about you?
Sure. Well, like you said in the intro, my name is Stephanie Hardy, and I'm the host and creator of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. I've been a wrestling fan since I was 4 years old. I started watching with my father during the heat of the Monday Night Wars. And even though I didn't know that was what was going on, but that's how long I've been a fan. And I watch all kinds of wrestling. I've never stopped being a wrestling fan. I never grew out of it. It's something that I love and hold very dear and near to my heart. It's given me lots of great friends. It's part of the reason why I have, my relationship and everything that's going on with it. And I just hope to create a space for people to listen to what they love about wrestling, because the mission of my podcast is to be chill, positive, and passionate. And basically, I just want to give like a more chillaxed, more R&B type of atmosphere for my podcast, and then be positive to talk about most of the things that I love, because I feel like in wrestling culture, we have a tendency to discuss things that we hate a whole lot as opposed to talking about what we actually love. Mm-hmm. And I'm really passionate about it because I just love this sport so very much. So that's a whole lot about me. So that's it. And I'm 27 years old. And just like you said, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. It's a great wrestling city. We have great fans here. And then also in different areas of Alabama, we have different independent scenes going on as well that I'm learning more about each and every day. So that's a lot about me.
Okay, that's real cool. That you hold wrestling dear to your heart. I'm the same way too. What got you into wrestling?
Well, like I said, I was watching it with my daddy. He
Mhm.
wrestling, and my grandmother loved wrestling too. She would go to this place called the Boutwell Auditorium in downtown Birmingham and go to a lot of wrestling matches there. And then he got into it basically by proxy. And then when I was about 4 years old, I walked into the living room and he was watching Hulk Hogan versus Goldberg.
Oh
Um,
wow.
Champion match that took place at the Georgia Dome. And I asked Dad, I was like, who's that? And he was just like, that's Hulk Hogan. I said, who's the bald guy? And he said, that's Goldberg. And I said, okay. And I just sat and watched it with them and I've just been doing it like that ever since. When I was little, I wanted to be a Nitro girl because that was kind of really a part of the only representation I saw as a woman, as a young girl on the show. And I would dance along with them and all the other stuff like that. So that's basically what got me into it. It was Hulk Hogan and Goldberg and the Nitro Girls.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I might didn't ask that question too good though, but that got you into it. But what hooked you though afterwards though? Once you saw Goldberg and Hulk Hogan and the Nitro Girls, just what match I guess or moment that you was like, okay, this is really it. I really like it.
um, I can't really say because that was really the moment. And
Okay.
when you're a child, and you're looking at something, and it grasps you, you just deal with it and that's just what it is. So like I said, I was really young at the time. So when I was just sitting there looking at it, I was just spending time with my dad and just watching what was on the television, and that was what was it. And that just never changed at all.
Oh,
So that really was the moment that it happened.
okay. Were you back and forth from WCW and WWF at the time?
Oh yeah, because he would tape them back to back. Like, I know this is kind of old, but this is when VHSs were a thing.
Hmm.
So he had like a stack of videotapes, piled up around the television of almost every episode that he wouldn't see because sometimes he'd have to work at night.
Okay.
So I'll go back and watch them like the day afterward from taping them, and it would go back and forth between WCW and WWF at the time. So we were watching both of them at the same time, and it was crazy.
That's awesome. That's real cool. You like you said, you're the host and the creator of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. How long have you been podcasting?
I've been podcasting since February of this year.
Okay. What made what made you want to get into it?
Well, I was a member of this Facebook group along with my boyfriend, and it was called Real Wrestling Fans. And they had it in their minds as one of the plans to start a podcast. And I was one of the administrators at the time. And I really enjoyed doing it because I would always ask questions for discussions and stuff like that, and push a lot of love for women's wrestling on that on that platform. And they would discuss, having a podcast, but we never did it somehow. And around the time when I left, I was just like, maybe I should do one. And then I was just like, well, since, there's really nothing else going on right now in my life, I just decided to just go ahead and just do it. And I was nervous at first because I was like, I don't know who's going to listen to me, who's going to want to listen to me, talk about this thing, because there's only so few people in my life.
Exactly.
But once I started, finding a rhythm and actually organized, what I wanted the podcast to be about, I started becoming more and more comfortable doing that. And it's been great. Like, I love it so much.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Your podcast is taking off for you. I seen that you had Thunder Rosa on.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. How was that? Because she's doing some big things right now. But how was it?
It was really cool. Like, if you go back and listen like to the episode, we had an amazing discussion about, how she feels about where women's wrestling is going and what could be better, and how she's sort of contributing to that with her own wrestling promotion, Mission Pro Wrestling, and just everything that she seeks to do in wrestling. And it was really cool to have a conversation with her. It was a huge honor for me because when I started the podcast, I was talking to a lot of independent wrestlers from all over the country and even here, and then also fans as well,
Mm-hmm.
that are close to me. And I thought that maybe later on in my podcasting life, like maybe a year or two from now, I would get somebody like her who's actually been, you know, in the independent circuit and also on television through AEW and stuff. I thought it would be way later. But the fact that I was able to, you know, get a chance for her to be on my show now when I'm so early in, you know, in starting, it meant the world to me. Like, I cried afterward. It was, it was such a big deal because my inner child was like, man, like, you're actually talking to wrestlers. Like, this is legit. And it just meant the world to me.
I know what you. I know the feeling. I know the feeling. A couple of weeks ago, actually, it was last week. I had Ring of Honor Shane Taylor on, so that was also dope. Eddie Torres, who was on AEW Dark. So I've been doing this wrestling podcast since May. So to have, you know, guys to reach out and, you know, Tommy Dreamer responded back to me, and, you know, Leo Rush, you know, possibly being on the show. So, you know, it's incredible, you know, but I've been podcasting going on a year now, but it's awesome. It really is. You mentioned women's wrestling. How do you feel about women's wrestling right now?
Well, if you listen to my podcast, you notice that when I do my weekly recaps of my shows, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, I talk about the first. And I have such a high regard for it because it's like when I was little, there was the whole, you know, spot where women just weren't in the best place to show what they could do athletically because they were seen as the eye candy or as the bathroom break. And to see how it's grown now, you know, I'm a little bitter because I wish it had grown like that when I was little, but it's okay because it's happening regardless. So somebody little is looking at it somewhere. So that's all that matters. But I'm really happy with how women's wrestling has grown over the years. Like, from watching them, you know, do stuff. Now, mind you, in other promotions, women's wrestling was put on a higher pedestal. Like, I will give credit to places like Impact that did have their knockouts division and how they were doing a whole lot more before WWE decided to catch up with that. But once WWE started to catch up with that, it's like they invited a whole plethora of the most talented women that were homegrown and also grown into independence and allowed them to shine in a greater way. And they've taken the ball and just ran with it. And I'm just so proud of it each and every day. I know there's definitely more they could do storyline wise a lot of the time because sometimes on WWE programming, when it comes to the women that aren't on like a main big storyline for a title, it's almost like they sort of have them scrambling around and not doing as much as a mid-card would deserve to have. And I feel like when it comes to storylines, there's a whole lot more that they could do. But for the most part, I have to be grateful because it's not where it was. You know, so I'm really happy with where the women are now, but then there's always definitely room for growth. So I'm really glad.
Yeah, really glad to see how far the women wrestling has came. Like you said, I grew up watching wrestling starting at like 8 years old. I'm 29 now, be 30 at the end of the month. So when I was growing up watching women wrestling, it was just bra and panty matches. You know, right. It was just 2, 4, 3-minute matches, and that was a wrap. You feel me? I mean, maybe Trish or Lita get, you know, the most, you know, if it's a woman title matches, maybe Victoria. But now to see it coming where, you know, Sasha, Bayley, Charlotte, all these different, you know, women getting so big, massive opportunities, Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda, you know, main evented WrestleMania last year. So, you know, that's dope. That's real, real dope. Speaking of WrestleMania, you were telling me off air how you went to WrestleMania in Atlanta, Georgia, WrestleMania 27, which one of my cool WrestleManias because that's when The Rock came back too. So how was it? You know, I gotta ask because I haven't experienced the WrestleMania yet, so it's still hurt. But I just want to ask, how was the experience at WrestleMania?
Well, first of all, I recommend it to any wrestling fan to just go to a WrestleMania because it is absolutely unbelievable. It's like you're in it's like a United Nations of wrestling. You got everybody from all over the world, you know, at this one event, you know, coalesced together. And it's so cool. It's almost like a giant convention. But I will say this, I love the fact that I went, with innocent eyes, because the older I've gotten, the more I realize that a lot of people kind of, want to throw that WrestleMania in the trash, and it kind of makes me sad. But, it's my WrestleMania, and I can say that I went. So I don't ever let anyone take that away from me. It was so cool, to find out a couple weeks, before WrestleMania was happening, and me and my father and my sister at the time were going. And to find out that The Rock was hosting, because he is one of my top favorites, of all time. I love him. And it's just the way he said he was hosting, and the music hit on that Raw, and he announced he was like,
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh man. I tell the story all the time. That Raw, when he was supposed to be the host,
mm-hmm.
whoo, man, I went wow, like super wild, man. I cried too and everything because they were talking about it was supposed to be somebody else and somebody else. Like my sister was sitting right beside me. I'm on the floor and just sitting. And looking back at it now, you can kind of like tell it was The Rock in a way because the whole electricity going through, the Titantron and the lights cut off and just the first. Man, I woke everybody up in the house. I would tell you, man, it was bananas. The Rock is my favorite, and man, I don't. Well, why you say people threw that WrestleMania in the trash?
Because like if you just listen to a lot of podcasts, or if you read a lot of articles, it's like whenever they rate, they have a tendency to rate that one relatively low because of the card. Outside of Undertaker and Triple H's match, which is the first of their matches that they had at WrestleMania, and outside of um the whole John Cena and the Miz thing, it's like they really don't talk about it that much, or they rate it really low because they feel like the quality of the card just wasn't that good, and because they had that women's mixed tag with Trish Stratus and Snooki and John Morrison and Michelle and Lay Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Dolph Ziggler, and they just rate it really low. And I just don't. And then also the match with Michael Cole and Jerry the King Lawler, because Michael Cole was heel at the time and they were beefing. And that was a little bit annoying because that was when Michael Cole was all like, can I have your attention, please? I thought he was more important than he actually was. And I think that's part of the reason why they rate it really low. But I just know, as for me, being a kid at the moment, that was the last wrestling event I was going to be able to go to before I graduated from high school and went to college. So it meant a lot to me to actually be there and then actually experience, Edge, versus Alberto Del Rio in his final match, before he retired, and then retired for like 9 years, and now he's back. So
Mm-hmm.
that WrestleMania meant the world to me to just be there. I feel like I keep saying it a whole lot, but it did mean the world to me to just be there, in the midst of all of that, because how many, there are a lot of wrestling fans who dream about going to WrestleMania, but, to actually be there, just means it was just awesome. It was just awesome. And
Yeah.
I take that away from me.
Nah, nobody can take that away from you. But looking back at it, I got a collection of WrestleMania tapes and DVDs before the network came out, so I was stacking up on a bunch of stuff. So, yeah, wasn't my favorite WrestleMania though, because I think the Michael Cole and stuff, and I think Edge and Alberto Del Rio. I think that was the first WrestleMania that a world title went on first. That
Mm-hmm.
shocked me. So it was interesting though, but I loved it because The Rock was there, and can't take that away from me neither. So The Rock is there. But
Yeah.
we're gonna move on here on Talk Pro Wrestling. And well, speaking of WrestleMania, The Undertaker, of course, is synonymous with WrestleMania, and we got a 30th anniversary coming up in a couple of weeks at Survivor Series. They say it's supposed to be his farewell, I guess, appearance. What do you think? Do you think this is going to turn into, which I think so, a build up, a matchup to whom I don't know yet, but a matchup at WrestleMania?
I'm kind of split in between, because if you watch his documentary, The Last Ride, he was saying that this was it for him.
Okay.
And like he had reached a point where he was, okay with it being it for him, and stuff. And it felt, to me like, it really could be it, because it was definitely like a recollection of everything that he's done for the business, for other wrestlers and stuff like that. And it was a well done documentary, because you got to see a part of him that a lot of us, didn't think we'd ever see. And a part of me also believes it because he's doing this final farewell at Survivor Series, in November, which is ultimately where he debuted. So it's a full circle kind of thing that's happening here. He's giving this farewell, where he began. And, it's been 30 years, and that's a long time for anybody, to be doing anything, even definitely wrestling. So if it is a final farewell, then I hope it'll be a beautiful final farewell, that'll be it. But then there's the other half of me that, knows that when it comes to wrestling and how addictive it is, people really don't retire for real, for real. They find a way to come back somehow, in some way. So it could be, an inkling of someone, possibly challenging him for the last time for maybe his last match. I just have that skepticism in my mind because, like I said, people really don't retire from wrestling. They just, find a way to pop back up somehow. So I'm kind of split, in between, what I want to believe. A part of me wants to believe that this is it because, they did the whole press release and everything, and if it wasn't real, then maybe they wouldn't release it, to all of these public places, like all of these publications like ESPN and CBS Sports and all that. But then there's the other part of me that's a wrestling fan that feels like, this may not be real. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, I personally think, of course, it's real. He's saying he retired. A bunch of wrestlers say they retired and come right back out. And I think everybody, if you want to retire, WrestleMania will probably be the place. It's not a guarantee that we'll have fans at WrestleMania this year. So maybe this could be his farewell. So maybe. You also mentioned one of your also favorites too, Sasha Banks. What was your thoughts on her retaining the SmackDown Women's Championship last night on SmackDown after, the whole, thing on her back, which, she can't defend the title without losing it. So she beat Bayley last night. What was your thoughts on that?
I was really happy. I was so happy that she retained her title because I mentioned it in my last episode that that after Bayley had challenged her, she kept reiterating the fact that she never, is able to successfully defend her title. And I was just really happy that she actually was. And then to start off the show too, it was a pretty good match. And I was just really glad she was able to retain that title because I feel like, in my opinion, that Sasha Banks is the greatest women's wrestler of all time, all around. I know you could argue, your point, but to me, I just feel like she's just the greatest, just up and down. And for someone like her to be, the greatest of all time to me, it didn't make sense at first for her to have all these titles, to won the Raw Women's title, 4 or 5 times now. And then for her to lose it so many times, even though the times she won it, she was in a back and forth with Charlotte Flair, and they were playing hot potato and all of that. And she even said, and I even said in my podcast, in an interview she did with Sam Roberts, the company had this idea that Sasha didn't necessarily need a title to be over, which is true. Because she has all the attitude and all of the athleticism and the star power, to be over without a title. And that's true. Whereas someone like Charlotte Flair would, because she's a Flair. Flairs and championships are synonymous. But it just didn't make sense to me that she would have, these championships and then for her to just lose them all the time. Like, that would irritate me and anger me a whole lot. So to see her retain, finally, even though it was on a television, show and for free, to see her retain last night against someone who's her greatest rival, just meant everything to me. So I was just really glad that she was able to retain and to prove that she's just not, a flash in the pan champion, because she's not a flash in the pan wrestler. So
yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed the match. I thought it was very interesting that, for one, they started the show off with that. But I was like, hold up, wait a minute, Bayley may win, but Sasha won that, and I was cool with that. And it was surprising that it was a Instagram post. Carmella didn't make the Instagram post, but she commented, about what actually happened later on that night, talking about you would want to tune in, et cetera, et cetera. And then she went on to attack Sasha Banks. So I'm cool with that because that gives them time to build up Bianca Belair, because I would really love to see Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks throw down. I think that'd be really, really dope.
Yes, that's gonna be great.
Mm-hmm. Another thing on SmackDown that was really cool. I got to get your thoughts on Roman Reigns, the situation with Roman Reigns and the Usos, because last night was another step further. How Roman Reigns just, how he was talking to Paul, and how Uso, was just going off on Kevin Owens about, are you disrespecting my family, and him getting win after win over Daniel Bryan. Now is Kevin Owens. What's your thoughts on the whole story?
I love that entire storyline. Like, I feel like Roman Reigns being heel is probably one of the best things to happen this year, because I feel like the fans sort of always wondered what it would be like, simply because we always saw him as a face, but then the Shield, we always saw him as the face dude and as the dude that WWE was trying to position to be like the next guy after John Cena. And a lot of people didn't like that because the way they were doing it was just kind of like, like extra. But I feel like this makes a lot of sense, and it's just, he's coming off like a mob boss. Like, he's like the mob boss is going to tell you what to do and how you need to do it. And if it's not done the way I said it should be done, then there are severe consequences behind it. And the fact that he even has Paul Heyman, of all people, scared, got Paul Heyman scared, it's just kind of like, whoa, like it just brings another, gravity, like another level of gravity to it. And it's just amazing to see him sort of step into this, evil role. And it's so evil, but yet it's so delicious at the same time. Like, oh, and then I wasn't expecting the first person for him to feud with after, the whole Braun Strowman thing to be his cousin either. Like, it's just, to throw Jey Uso in the mix, who has never gone, for a singles run, has just been unbelievable. Like, I cannot, like, it's just so amazing, how they're able to put so much emotion behind it. It's not only the fact that they're so good, athletically, they're amazing with the storytelling, like with the emotion that they're putting behind it. Like in that Hell in a Cell match, when Roman was beating up on Jay, and then Jimmy ran out there and started using their real names. He was like, no, this is Josh and John. This is Josh and John. We can get through this. We can get through this. In the fact, and Roman was crying. Like, I don't see how they don't win a primetime Emmy for that. Like, it's
I don't know. I don't know if I said on this past week's episode that because I found out in the groups that I met you in, that somebody said it's a petition going around for Roman Reigns to win an Emmy, though, because he was crying. Yes, like it's really a petition going around for him to cry. I was literally glued to it when he came out. He was about to hit him with a steel chair. Oos came out like, nah, man, come on. But the another part that got me, though, that was so good, is the part where he put Jimmy in the submission, and Jimmy is just shaking Jay arm, and he lifeless, though, like lifeless, and he just like, we quit. And then the look that Roman Reigns just like so evil, like, oh my God, like it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Do you think Jimmy is gonna align himself with Roman and Jay?
I feel like he's gonna fight it at first. If when he does return, I feel like he's gonna fight it at first, and then realize that he really doesn't have a choice, and then join him.
He's gonna have to fall in line.
It's gonna be a faction, and it's gonna be sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was getting a little everybody points of views. What about Naomi? Because Naomi is, I think it was Jimmy's husband. And then you got like what about Tamina? Because Tamina is, really bloodline into the family. So it's so many dynamics that they can go with this. And whoever's writing the story, kudos to them. That's all I'm going to say right there with that one. Kudos to them. But you guys here on Talk Pro Wrestling, I have my guest, Stephanie, the host of Hardy Wrestling Podcast. We're chopping it up here, talking some pro wrestling. You guys stick with us. We're going to take a quick, short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk some more wrestling. And we're going to play a game, a trivia game on some wrestling here on the 1130 Podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling.
When it comes to growing your podcast, it's tough to know where to start. That's why Anchor gives podcasters the tools they need to make each episode better than the last. Now, Anchor Analytics includes new stats from Spotify to help you better understand who's listening and what they like about your show. With charts that let you see how far people are making it into each episode and where they're dropping off, you can plan your podcast around the content that performs best. Hover over to see how many people are tuning into specific segments and learn what hooks your audience by comparing the average listening time across multiple episodes. Using anonymized demographic data from Spotify, take a granular look at the age and gender of your listeners to start tailoring your content or targeting new audiences. Track analytics from multiple platforms and Spotify insights. Everything you need to grow your podcast all in one place with Anchor.
Yo, you guys, welcome back here to the 1130 Podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. Appreciate you guys sticking with me throughout the commercial break. I got my guest here this week, Stephanie Hardy. She's the host and the creator of Wrestling Hardy Podcast, you guys. Sitting here chopping it up on this bonus episode, talking about some wrestling, having fun. Before the break, we was talking about what was going on SmackDown this past week. Before we move on, another thing you said you were very interested in on the story that's on SmackDown right now, the Murphy and Aaliyah story right now. Can you tell me more about why you're into that? And it took a little turn for me last night with Murphy and Seth Rollins. So what was you think on the story and how's it going?
I think that even though a lot of people I see on social media are sort of, becoming kind of tired of it, which I do understand because, the whole Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio beef has grown a little long in the tooth. Because you would think that after a certain point it would be over, but they're still, going with it, even as they've been traded to SmackDown. I feel like I think a part of the reason why the Murphy and Aaliyah storyline intrigues me is because I'm a romantic. Because when she was like, I love him, I was like, uh-oh. That's just something I'm a sucker for. I love romantic stories. So it's just anytime romance and wrestling come together, I just turn into a mushy fool. And even though I know there are a lot of fans who feel like it shouldn't be happening because she's younger and he's, older. I feel like in wrestling, if it's consented, I feel like if it wasn't an okay thing, I feel like Ray and her both would have said, I'm not comfortable with this, and they would not have let it go on television. And I just feel like even though it's happening and even though people have their feelings about it, I'm still intrigued by it because you have Murphy who's trying to redeem himself. It's like he sees that everything he's been doing with Seth Rollins as his disciple and the whole Messiah thing, which is a whole nother thing in and of itself that I don't really want to get into right now. He's just trying to redeem himself to prove, that he's not the disciple dude that he's been over the past couple of, months. And he's trying to prove that he's, a good guy and sort of stand on his own 2 feet. And I'm for it because Murphy is really talented. Like, I feel like something that they failed to mention a whole lot, even also in terms of how they address Mustafa Ali and even Cedric Alexander is affected. These guys are former cruiserweight champions and they are really talented. And in the case of Murphy, one of his trunks used to say, he's wrestling's best kept secret, and he's really good. So I feel like for him to place himself in a position where he's going to pretend to be the disciple to Seth Rollins' Messiah in order to get close to him and beat him up and all that, for them to actually, you know, have a knockdown, drag out fight to sort of take Seth's mind off the Mysterios, it's going to be good because, you know, Seth is one of the best in the world and Murphy is clearly one of the best as well. And he's looking to prove himself now, you know, outside of being in a group dynamic. So it's going to be really good either way. And also you have Murphy trying to prove himself to Aaliyah and the family, you know, to say, you know, I'm worthy of having her heart because I have the right, you know, intentions. Because of course you see Ray and Dominic don't trust it. So as the skeptical dad and the skeptical brother. So I think it's interesting in that aspect, you know. I know it's unpopular because a lot of people are tired of it, but I still think is, you know, interesting in that aspect of it, especially with what happened last night with him sort of realigning with Seth, but really realigning with Seth. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be okay.
The universe itself always got to dig up some dirt, though. Yes, Aaliyah may be 19 years old, but the simple fact that us in the WWE universe is in our own bubble. So we don't know how old Murphy is, and we don't know how old Aaliyah is. And if you want to go do some dirt and you want to look it up, then that's the fans who got a problem with the situation. Let the story be the stories. Just come on, suspend your belief for a moment, and you know, just watch the show. Because if you don't do that, then you're gonna ruin it, and it's not going to be great no more at all. Another thing, Alexa Bliss. How do you feel about Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt right now? I seen your eyes just get real big, so maybe you like it.
I do. Like, I really do. Like, the way that it happened was just, it was gradual, and the way that she, you know, sort of portrayed it happening gradually was kind of genius. Like, it's like little by little, you saw her behavior change. You saw her hair change. It's just like, and then it's like once she went full on, you know, fiend girl, like when they finally came together, it gave me two different vibes. The first vibe it gave me was like, if you know anything about musicals, it gave me like Phantom of the Opera vibes. Like you have this beautiful girl who's into this ugly monster who's trying to show her a different world and all of that. And then it also gave me Joker and Harley Quinn vibes once they got together. And it's like, you know, it's like she's the, you know, brilliant girl who's going to sucker you in. So this monster, this more devastating monster will come and destroy you. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's more amazing than I thought it would be. And then when they were on SmackDown, like something like to tie back into brilliant storytelling, of course, before the draft happened, it's like when she went full on fiend on Lacey Evans, and then after he beat her, and then Roman Reigns came out and held up his title, and then you saw it was almost like the fiend had basically possessed her, and then you saw her leaving and staring at him. That was so perfect for me. I was just like, ooh, it's like you could feel it. You could feel like the tension, you know, you could feel the fiend sort of, I guess you could say, spirit, you know, almost descend upon her and look at Roman as if he was getting ready to come after Roman and that title because he had lost it, you know, and stuff. But then, of course, the draft happened and now they're on Raw. And because they're on Raw, then you got the whole storyline between Drew and Randy, who's the champion now. It's like now they're going after Randy and Drew. And it's just kind of like, yes! They're continuing to wreak havoc. And it's just really cool. And then it's like, you know, she's really embraced it because, you know, with the gloves, you know, you have the Fiend who has hurt and heal on his gloves. She has play and pain on hers. And they're white. It's just man. And then it's just like, you know, she gets these demon eyes. It's almost like she's slowly but surely becoming, you know, something different. And when you think about Alexa Bliss, you know, and how she was a champion and how she was a heel, you know, and then she turned face when she was with Nikki Cross and stuff. I never would have imagined, you know, a lot of people were wondering, you know, on social media, like, how is she going to, you know, adapt to being in the main card and not in the mid card and not being on the main card. And this is a wonderful way to utilize her talents. Like, it's amazing. It's scary because, Monday she had the whole time to look like a whole fruit roll up, but it was I have been enjoying it a lot. Like, it's definitely one of the bright parts of Raw. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool. I seen Nikki Cross for the first time on SmackDown last week, try to, get her attention, and she had the crazy looking eyes, and I'm loving all of it. For us, everything, the storytelling is my favorite. Now that she's in the Firefly Funhouse now, and oh, that's another thing I was thinking of while I was talking. The gloves that you were just mentioned. She had pain and play, you said, and her brain has hurt and healed. I was talking to a guy from True Hill. He was explaining that to me because I didn't, quite get it. I just know he had some gloves that said some words on it. I think when he used certain gloves, that's, the direction that the superstar that he faced, goes, far as Braun Strowman, how he cut his hair and went bald. And, he's kind of like in a different Braun a little bit. How Fiend, how he went to hell, how Seth now the Monday Night Messiah, and just so many, Roman, how Roman went to hell, but, it wasn't all the way, but I love it. All the backstory of it is really, really super, super cool. Gotta ask you how you feel about the Hurt Business.
I love the Hurt Business. It's gonna sound like I love everything, but
hey, I love it. I love it. We talking about something we love, and it's wrestling, so we love everything. So, but how you feel about it?
I love the Hurt Business because I didn't expect them to become a faction. Because it seemed like, MVP, I'm so used to seeing MVP sort of do him that it's just like to see him, actually create this group, out of all these, people who are young, but they're not really young at the same time, but are still as younger than him. It's just really cool, and to see what it offers in terms of wrestlers that you hadn't really seen a whole lot of in the past couple of years, maybe months, it's just really good because when it comes to Shelton Benjamin, like, he's definitely one of the most underrated talents that WWE has ever had. Mm-hmm. And it's just like when it's like he's been switched back and forth, between the two shows, but we hadn't really seen that much of him. And so it's good for him to, get his exposure out there. And then you have Bobby Lashley, who is sort of trying to rehab his whole image from the kind of the train wreck that the whole Lana and Bobby Lashley thing was. And, he's able to do that and sort of, hold the US title, now and be more serious. And then you have Cedric Alexander, who I said before was, kind of underrated, and no one really ever mentions the fact that he's a champion, as well. And he has this opportunity to show that he has more of an edge. And then you have MVP, the guiding force, who's more of an icon, in this business now. And it's just so good for what he's doing in terms of Black male wrestlers, as a whole. And then when you have the idea of Black male wrestlers, you also have more of a less monolithic view of what they can be, because you have them, and you have the Street Profits, and of course you have the New Day, which are now separated. And it's just really good to see, all of these multifaceted Black men on these different shows being able to do what they do. And I love everything about them. Now, the one thing I don't love about the Hurt Business is how they keep going over on Retribution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like they made Retribution look like this amazing, like, made them look like this sort of amazing group, and then all of a sudden they're losing all the time, and I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, I'm right with you.
Yeah, so I think that's really the only thing that I really just don't like about the Hurt Business is the fact that they keep, of course you want to make them look strong, but at the expense of this new group of wrestlers, it's just kind of like, dang. And almost at the expense of Mustafa Ali, being revealed as a leader, it's just kind of like, dang. But,
Yeah, kind of sucks, though. I had real high hopes for, and I still do have high hopes for Retribution. I just want to see where it goes because big fan of Mustafa Ali, and like he was saying, like my guest who was on the show this past week was saying, I'm a big fan of storytelling. You know, WWE haven't done that great of storytelling over the years. So they got this Roman Reigns, Uso, Paul Heyman thing right on mark. The whole Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt thing on mark. So whatever they doing and whoever's writing it, just, you know, keep it on the road. Keep it on the road. We're going to move on here on Talk Pro Wrestling. Before we play our game, we got AEW Full Gear tonight. What's your thoughts on Full Gear and AEW as a whole?
Well, I know this might sound a little bit unpopular, but I've sort of tried. I've had like a back and forth relationship with AEW because I watch them occasionally, not as much as I watch NXT on Wednesdays. And it's just from a certain standpoint, it's like I want to enjoy them for what they give, but then sometimes I feel like a lot of what they give is sort of out of spite for the next company. And it's sort of hard for me to fully, you know, get into them as their own individualized thing because they focus so hard on what WWE is doing. And it's just, and in the moments where they don't focus on what WWE is doing, then it's great, because I did enjoy that one segment that Chris Jericho and MJF did where they were singing and dancing. But then again, I'm a musical person, so I love singing and dancing. I'm just a sucker for stuff like that. But I will also say that it just seems like everything they do is just almost out of spite, and it's hard for me to get into them because of that. But then you also have the fact that there's growth that needs to happen for their women's division as well, because they have the talent, but somehow no, they're just not paying them that much attention. And it's just, and when they do pay them attention, it's not, I don't know, it's just a disconnect there. And I feel like there's more that they could do with their women's division. And then it's just, yeah, it's hard for me to get into it. Now, I did say that I wanted to give Full Gear a chance and actually watch it today, but I'm not exactly sure, you know, what's going to happen today because so much can. So, so yeah, like, I want to try and give them a chance and still give them a chance as a fan, but it's just kind of hard for me to really, you know, commit to them because there's so much that they sort of do out of spite that it's just almost like, sir, like, do you know who you are?
You said they do, you know, things out of spite. Can you give me an example, like something they did out of spite?
It seems like almost every time, well, not every time, but sometimes whenever there's a bigger star who used to be in WWE, comes over to AEW. And this happened also on Impact as well, you know, years before. But it just seems like every time someone big from WWE goes to somewhere else, they always cut a promo about how much WWE sucked for them. And how over here it's going to be different and all of the above. And I'm going to be this person. I'm going to be this person. I'm going to be blah, 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 blah. And in some cases, it does, you know, work in the sense that you have people like Jon Moxley, who was able to leave from his Dean Ambrose character and become the AEW champion. And he still is a champion. And that's a wonderful thing, that he's able to sort of become, you know, this fully realized version of himself that he wasn't becoming in WWE. That is 100% valid. If you feel like you're not happy, go to where you feel like you'll be valued and happy. But also at the same token, there's just, you know, it comes off as bitter when you complain about what didn't happen, you know, over there. And now that I'm over here, everything's going to be blah, blah, blah. It just comes off as bitter to me. And I'm just like, you know, if you're moving on, move on. You know, there's a sense of moving on and being healthy about it, and then which is different from moving on and still being mad. The way that my boyfriend discusses it, because he's a longtime wrestling fan, he says that when you move on, like even when it comes to a relationship, like when you move on from this one relationship that didn't work out, and then you move on to a better one, you know, you do a whole lot better focusing on this person that you're with instead of focusing all your energy on the one thing that didn't work out. Because how are you ever able to truly move on to the next thing and become who you're truly meant to be in this new thing, if you're constantly looking backwards? And
You're
that's
right.
just, you know, and that's just how I feel about it.
You're right. You're right. That's a good point to look at it. I say in a way, a lot of AEW fans may not agree, but it's just a way that I may feel that a majority of the AEW fans are bitter. I want to say that because of what the quality of WWE product that has been putting on lately. I want to say a lot of guys who are in AEW who may have came from WWE are bitter. They probably wouldn't use right. Some of them were held down. Some of them may not. Some of them would probably gave a script and said this and say that, or XYZ, or maybe was fired, you know, during a crazy pandemic or whatnot. And I think, of course, like I said, a lot of wrestling fans who watch it are bitter too because they just enjoy something different, I guess. But you are right, because a lot of guys do pull that promo once they leave WWE and, you know, shoot on it and, you know, say what they got to say. But I don't know. It's crazy though. But we're gonna move on here on Talk Pro Wrestling, you guys. We're gonna play a game of Are You a Fan or Nah? I got Stephanie here, and she said her favorite wrestlers: The Rock, Sasha Banks, and Shawn Michaels. So we're gonna ask you a couple of questions, trivia questions, and let's see how big of a fan you are or not. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. First one. HBK, Shawn Michaels, won Match of the Year in 2008. Who was it against?
2008? Wow. The only person I would imagine is actually, it's two people I have in mind. It's either John Cena or The Undertaker. Maybe. I feel like it could be either one of those two.
Okay. You were close. You want a hint?
Sure.
Woo!
Ric Flair? Yeah.
Ric Flair. Yeah, Ric Flair. And Ric Flair's final matchup at WrestleMania, that match of the year. Okay. Who are the two famous celebrities that is related to Sasha Banks?
Ooh. Brandy and Snoop Dogg.
I'm gonna give you that one. But it's actually Ray J. Well, yeah, Brandy is. There you go. You got it. There you go. Brandy wasn't up on the list. I just got Ray J. So, yeah, you got that one. Okay. Who was Team Bad consist of?
It consists of Sasha Banks, Naomi, and Tamina.
All right. Okay, cool. The Rock fought Stone Cold Steve Austin at 3 WrestleManias. Which WrestleManias were they?
I only really know 2. I think it was it X? Was it X? I don't want to say it was, because I definitely know one was 19. And because I remember that one definitely, because I think that was the first WrestleMania DVD I ever watched. And then
I think you were about to say it.
X7.
Okay, that's the second one.
Other one.
Okay, 15.
15, okay.
Yeah, 15. I give you that one. WrestleMania 15. Sasha Banks defeated Charlotte at NXT TakeOver to win her first NXT championship. Which takeover was it?
Oh. Was it TakeOver Arrival?
It was TakeOver Arrival.
Okay.
Yeah, TakeOver Arrival.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels and Triple H last held the World Tag Team titles in 2010. Who did they lose them to?
2010. You said Shawn Michaels and who held the
Triple
tag?
H. DX. Yeah. I'm gonna give you a hint. One of the guys right now is Mr. Money in the Bank.
Was it The Miz and John Morrison? Big Show?
Yes, The Miz and Big Show.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. The Rock left WWE for Hollywood. What was his first movie?
Technically, it would be The Mummy Returns, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would be. Yes.
Because even though it was The Mummy Returns.
Yeah, and his other the big movie, it was The Scorpion King right after that. That was this one. Yeah. How many times did The Rock win the WWE Championship?
Ooh. I'm going to guess and say maybe 4 times, 5 times, 4. I'm going to say 4.
4?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm going to add another 4 on that. It's going to be 8.
8, wow.
Yeah. So we both got that one because we both big Rock fans. So I said 4, you said 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. So we got it. We got it. Is that it? Yes, I believe that's it. That's it right there. That was a cool one. That was a cool game right there. Cool trivia game. Thought I'd play with you here on Talk Pro Wrestling. Before you wrap it up, Stephanie, is there anything you want to say? Any shout outs you want to give out?
I just want to thank you for putting me on your show. Like, this has just been an amazing ride, this whole wrestling podcasting thing. I've opened myself up to a new family in terms of wrestling podcasting. So I just want to thank you and thank anyone else who's had me on their show. If I could just put myself over a little bit, you can listen to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And you can follow me on social media on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy WrestlePod, because I had to make it short because y'all know characters. And, you know, I'm also selling t-shirts. I'm selling Chill, Positive, and Passionate t-shirts for $20 in the sizes of between small and extra large and in black and white. If you want one, you could just hit me up on my messenger on Facebook. And you can also like my page on Facebook, which is Hardy Wrestling with Stephanie Hardy. That's the old title. And just thank you so much for inviting me into your space. And I do more as I continue to grow.
All right. No problem, Stephanie. You're welcome anytime here on the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. I wish you the best in your podcast. Keep doing your thing, shine bright like you are right now. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Nice meeting you. Shout out to Birmingham, Alabama, the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And once again, Stephanie, thank you for joining me here on Talk Pro Wrestling.
Thank you.
Yo, Stephanie, appreciate you joining me here on the 1130 podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. It was an honor. It was a privilege to chat it up with you. You know, just seeing, the same vibes, you starting your podcast in February and how you got to have the opportunity to interview Thunder Rosa, former NWA Women's Champion, on your show. Just keep doing your thing. I wish you the best in your podcast. Keep knocking it out of the park. We wrestling fans kind of be in our own little bubble at times. So, let's stand out and do your thing. So, wish you the best. Keep doing your thing. And you guys, make sure you go subscribe, follow, go listen, go download it, go play the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. You did. go listen to it, the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. But you guys, man, before we wrap it up, don't forget, you guys, to follow the 1130 Podcast on all social media platforms. Follow me at Dreonwheels on Twitter, you guys. Follow the 1130 Podcast at the 1130 Podcast on Instagram. Like the 1130 Podcast on Facebook. Subscribe to the 1130 Podcast on YouTube, you guys. And once again, you guys, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating, review on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to the 1130 Podcast, Talk Pro Wrestling. And if you would like to be a guest here on Talk Pro Wrestling, email me. That's the 1130 podcast at gmail.com. That's the 1130 podcast at gmail.com. Man, what an episode. Another bonus episode in the books. We got a new president. You know, everybody's saying they're putting something on the grill, so it's a nice day in DC, man. But once again, you guys, thank you guys for taking your time out today to listen to me and enjoy some Talk Pro Wrestling, man. So, like The Rock says, go know your role, shut your mouth, jabronis. Yo, man, this your man Dre, a.k.a. Dre on Wheels, and I'm out.